This video is brought to you by John Robson Guitar Tuition. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting the channel by enrolling on a course, purchasing some guitar lessons or a t-shirt, or you can join my Patreon. Now, on with the show.
Previously on John Robson Guitar Tuition.
Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. It's Friday, so we're having a bit of a natter, basically. No lessons today, because as I've said before, who wants homework on a weekend? But if you do fancy some homework, that solo that you've just heard there, which was in the video I put up on Wednesday, I think, all about the Dorian mode and how it's my favourite blues rock scale. I said I was going to tab it out when I put that video up, and well, I spent all of yesterday essentially doing exactly that. It's now tabbed out and it's up on my Patreon page, where you can grab it in either Guitar Pro format or in just a standard PDF. I've also put up a video there of me playing that solo, the full video, so you can download that video and view it to your heart's content and look at what my fingers are doing and match that up with a tab and so on. And just for good measure, I've put the jam track up as well. If you didn't see the original video that I put up on Wednesday, link is in the description. So if you want to support the channel and learn some cool licks, then head off over to my Patreon page. $3 a month buys you tabs like that on a regular basis. I also do a monthly podcast radio show kind of thing where I play lots of great music and talk about the guitar in general and various other music related matters. So that's the plugs out of the way. Let's crack on with today's video. Basically, you know when you are in a crowd of people and someone tells a joke and everyone else falls about laughing and you're kind of, not really sure and you don't get the joke and, you do that polite kind of little laugh sort of thing so as to appear part of the crowd. Well, that's the way I've reacted to certain bands over the years. I've said, yeah, you know what? Yeah, great band, and all the time I'm thinking, I really don't get this band, what's going on? But when you're too embarrassed to say so, that's been me for many years. But I recently turned 50. I turned 53 even more recently, and I'm just too big and old and ugly now to really give much of a damn about whether I'm embarrassing myself by not liking the right bands. So what I've come up with today are a list of 5 bands that over the years I've tried to get into. I've tried to get my head around the music. I really have made an effort, and it's all come to naught, unfortunately. So what I want you to do today is basically enlighten me. After you've heard about the bands that I don't really get, leave a comment below and tell me what it is I'm missing out on. I want to stress at this point here that I am not sitting here slagging off anybody else's favourite bands. That's not what this is about. This is my shortcomings as a listener that I don't get these bands. I'm pretty sure of that. So I want you to educate me. So let's have a look at the list.
Rush.
Okay then, Rush. A band that I kind of missed when I was first getting into rock music. That was during kind of the late 70s, early 80s with the whole new wave of British heavy metal stuff. That's when I started listening to rock music. All the usual suspects back then, Iron Maiden, Saxon, Judas Priest, UFO, all that kind of stuff. And I just never got round to checking out Rush. And then about 10, 12 years ago, I realised that this was a bit of a hole in my musical appreciation, so I thought, right, okay, let's do something about that. And I downloaded the entire discography. And usually what I do when I do that kind of thing is I'll just immerse myself in that music for as long as it takes. I'll usually spend a week listening to, just one album, repeatedly going over it and over it and over it. And gradually, as I plough through the body of work, then it'll start usually getting its claws into me a bit and making me think, oh yeah, that's pretty good, I should check that out a bit more and just listen to it a bit more intently, kind of get the headphones on while the missus is watching Coronation Farm and Emmerdale Street and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know, it just never ever got its claws into me in the way that I would have hoped that it would have done. Then sort of recently, with the sad passing of Neil Peart, I made another effort thinking, well, obviously the music hasn't changed, but maybe I've changed in the intervening years. And still, I find it a bit cold, clinical, dare I say it, a little bit humourless in places. And, you could make exactly the same arguments about a band like Steely Dan, who I love, so I'm not really sure that's a valid criticism. Whatever it is about the music of the band Rush, it just doesn't resonate with me. But, as is going to be the case with all of these bands that I'm talking about today, if you can make suggestions for maybe an album that I need to listen to that I'm not aware of, or maybe how I need to change my perspective when listening to it in some way or other, listen to it with a fresh set of ears, or maybe give me some backstory onto the albums that, what might make me hear it with a different, perspective, then please, by all means, let me know what you think. Let's see what's next.
Uriah Heep.
Again, another band who I just never got round to listening to. Perhaps this is true of many of these bands, that, the music that you listen to when you're in your teens and early 20s is the music that shapes you in a certain way. And maybe if I'd listened to this band back then, they would have had a bigger impact on me. I knew a few of their hits, obviously things like, Easy Living, The Gypsy, The Wizard, and that sort of stuff. And they were okay. They didn't really light my fire to a great degree, but it didn't really, it wasn't horrid to listen to. It wasn't a horrid experience, but it wasn't, something that made me want to think, oh, I've got to hear more of that band. And when I did decide to do exactly the same thing as I did with Rush, which was to, kind of grab the entire discography and start immersing myself in it and checking it out, there just wasn't anything there that made me feel excited or, want to check it out in more depth or, just investigate further. It's that sort of combination of heavy guitar and Hammond organ that I like as well. That's one reason why I love Deep Purple. That classic interplay between, in the golden age of Purple, John Lord and Ritchie Blackmore, and these days obviously it's Don Airey and Steve Morse flying that flag. I hear the same thing in Uriah Heep, but it just doesn't really, as I say, it doesn't float my boat in as big a way as Deep Purple do. So, if you have any suggestions, once again, for albums that I need to check out that maybe I'm not aware of, or different perspectives that I need to bring to the music when I listen to it, then by all means, make your thoughts known in the comments section below. Let's see what's next.
Radiohead.
Okay, now none of the bands on this list today are bands that I hate. I think that's a very strong word to use, and I admire anyone who has the gumption to, write songs and go out and perform them and make that their life. So, as I say, I don't hate this band, but out of all of the bands on this list, these are the ones that come closest to eliciting that reaction from me. As I understand, the core of the band was formed by a bunch of school friends who met up at a fairly expensive private school, so, they're obviously from affluent backgrounds, and the whole thing just comes across to me as being, a bunch of little rich boys bemoaning how awful their lives are. And that doesn't resonate particularly well with me. I tend to recoil a little bit from that sort of thing. But as I say, I'm obviously missing out on something. So, tell me what it is that makes this band fantastic. Tell me what it is that makes them worthy of the adulation and veneration that their fans bestow upon them. I mean, you listen to the to conversations between fans of Radiohead, and it kind of reminds me of how people of my generation talk about bands like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and etc. So, what am I missing? Tell me in the comments, guys, and I will be forever grateful. Let's see what's next.
Van Halen.
Okay, of all of the bands on this list, I suspect this is the one that I'm going to get into the most trouble for mentioning. Yeah, I just don't get Van Halen. I'm sorry, but there you have it. I've been, I've explained in reference to other bands about how, I kind of missed out on them when I was initially doing my apprenticeship in rock music, as it were. And I guess that's also the case with this band. If you grew up in the 70s, like I did in the UK, then your exposure to music was largely Top of the Pops, and maybe Old Grey Whistle Test as well. But Top of the Pops was where you kind of got your music from on TV. And we didn't really get much Van Halen on Top of the Pops, certainly in the early days. I remember seeing Bad Company on Top of the Pops. I remember seeing Queen on Top of the Pops pretty much every week, as my memory tells me. Black Sabbath as well. I remember seeing them on Top of the Pops around about the, I think it was the Never Say Die period, which admittedly the band themselves and Ozzy in particular have pretty much distanced themselves from, ever since then as being not their best work. But it was the album that got me into checking out Black Sabbath and then going forward and kind of getting into Ozzy's solo stuff. So I never really kind of was exposed to the early Van Halen albums. It wasn't until kind of 1984 when the 1984 album came out, and Jump was a big hit, and obviously Hot for Teacher and stuff, and it all just seemed a bit silly, really, a little bit immature. I mean, Dave Lee Roth as a 30-year-old singing Hot for Teacher, essentially a song about what it's like to be a 14-year-old who's never done it with a girlie, kind of having a crush on his teacher. It just, I don't know, just didn't really kind of grab me, to be honest. And yes, Eddie is a fantastic guitar player. I am not for one nanosecond disputing that. But there's just nothing about the band's music as a whole which makes me feel all warm and gooey inside, I'm afraid. Once again, if you have some perspective that you think I need to be aware of, something that I'm missing out on, then that's the point of this video. Tell me all about it in the comments section. Next.
Yes.
Okay, I'm well aware that I've already mentioned Rush, a progressive rock band, and Uriah Heep, arguably progressive rock, and now Yes. You might think that I have some kind of downer on progressive rock as a genre, and nothing could be further from the truth. I'm a big Pink Floyd fan, and I'd class them as progressive rock. Camel, one of my favourite bands, responsible for one of my favourite albums, The Snow Goose. Dixie Dregs and, Supertramp, are they progressive rock? Some people say they are. I'm not really sure myself. I just know that they produced another one of my favourite albums, Crime of the Century. So I don't have anything against this genre per se, but it's just the output of Yes. I just find it a little bit of a difficult listen, it has to be said. It's like, bear with me on this. You know, when you get some outrageous Shakespearean actor who's all big gestures and chewing the scenery, I believe is the term that's used in the acting profession. And then you get someone like Al Pacino in The Godfather, who doesn't seem to be doing a hell of a lot, but he's acting his socks off. It's just concealed. You don't see the mechanics of the technique on display. It looks effortless. And if anything, you can't really say about Yes's music, in my opinion, you can't really say that it's effortless. All of the abrupt time signature changes and odd meters and sudden key changes, it's like it's trying a bit too hard, and it's a bit sort of, look at us, aren't we clever? For me, it's all about concealing all of that stuff and making it all sound effortless in a way that I don't really find that Yes do. So, once again, if you have any input on this, anything that you can suggest that might make me change my mind, then that is what this video is about. Please leave a comment below. And there you have it. Those are the 5 bands that I don't really get my head around very easily. So please leave comments below. Tell me what it is that you love about these bands, if indeed you do love these bands, and tell me what it is that I'm missing. And that's pretty much it for the video today, folks. I do hope you've found it entertaining, and if you have, please leave a like and hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and all the rest of it. And if you want to support the channel, then links down below to Patreon, merchandise, courses, all the rest of it. And it just remains for me to say now, thank you so much for watching, thank you for your time, and I do look forward to seeing you all again next time around. Bye for now, folks.